could have never imagined it would have turned out like this.
Suspect is possibly still on scene. We have a male that has been shot.
Numerous deputies moving in with long rifles, handguns, shields.
I mean, I was just a small-town news reporter.
A man who was suspected of robbing a bank on Cortez Boulevard was shot.
Covering crime, crashes, human interest stories. You know, typical daily news. I guess you could say I was addicted to the adrenaline rush of beating the big broadcasters.
Air unit here soon. There are reports of shots fired by Hernando County Sheriff's deputies.
Shots fired. We need GMS. You guys good? Suspect down. Let's go. Get down here.
I mean, people loved it. It was more than just news. It was entertainment.
I love those pink signs, women for trouble.
Well, we feel confident about our work, our plan, our campaign, and our message.
So it's good. That's going to, other than the peephole.
Not abandon Americans to die.
But then, well, you know what they say about opening Pandora's box.
Violence, drugs, thefts, and even prostitution. That's what people say is happening in and around a local domestic violence shelter, and you, the taxpayer, are flipping the bill.
It's a horrible place. It's filthy. It's disgusting. For us, it's important for you either. There were girls outside smoking pot, shooting dope.
Kidnapping incident, argument, drugs, to sexual proposition, people knocking on your door at 11, 12 o'clock at night asking for rides, for money to use your phone.
Women and children come to this secure facility behind me, hoping to find safe haven from abusive situations inside their own home. Unfortunately, some women claim that the conditions inside this facility are worse than the ones they came from.
The house was disgusting, filthy, gross. The high chairs were dirty. The kitchens were dirty. It's filthy. It's a horrible place. There were girls outside smoking pot, shooting dope in their cars. Some of the women there would pull their 3-year-old kids' hair straight up, and the staff would just look and say nothing.
Constantly, being on our property, we found drug paraphernalia, baggies, hypodermic needles, rolling paper packages.
During our investigation, we discovered that the Hernando County Sheriff's Office received 187 calls for service to the facility in just 1 year, resulting in at least 4 arrests. In comparison, Pasco County Salvation Army Shelter only had 14 calls for service in 1 year, and Stewart County's Safe Space saw the same number of arrests in just under 2 years. Attempts to interview shelter director Shannon Sokolowski resulted in a vicious mudslinging campaign against RNRF by staff and even members of what is supposed to be a professional board of directors.
There's a big sign with your face, your name. Do not contact Real News.
A large majority are not using it for what it's there for.
Really, what type of people are going in there for help and why? And when several of them openly admitted we just needed a place to save money. I go out and see my husband every day. In my eyes, I think it's poor. I think they're money hungry. I think they're getting money from the states or wherever they can in donations just to make it look like they're helping people when they are not. And stop abusing the person that's abused.
Residents in this neighborhood want to know, will administrators take action? And are women and children behind these walls safe? Reporting from Spring Hill, I'm Tom Lemons.
Dawn Center is situated about 45 minutes north of Tampa Bay in Spring Hill, Florida. It's one of 42 nonprofit shelters in Florida that receives most of its funding through the Victims of Crime Act, which is part of then Senator Joe Biden's other failed piece of legislation, the Violence Against Women Act. Conservative-minded people know President Joe Biden is an expert at using identity politics to win elections. His entire 2020 campaign was based almost exclusively on diversity. A paradox as illogical as saying Fidel Castro and Adolf Hitler were champions of human rights. The Violence Against Women Act is essentially the crux of radical feminism in America. VAWA is just a multi-billion-dollar piece of pork that destroys families and does nothing to stop domestic violence. Erin Peasy established the very first women's shelters in the world, but says radical feminists with a Marxist agenda have weaponized her life's work to destroy families.
In that the shelters, the refuges, in most cases, are money-making machines. They're huge salaries. And essentially, what's happened in the last 50 years, that various governments have actually funded women's movement. Well, it's a pot of gold. Billions and billions of dollars across the Western world has gone down the drain and been abused fraudulently. These feminists had nothing to do with women. They were Marxists. And they always said, the Communist Party always said, subvert the women first, and then subvert the family. And it worked. It has worked. It's worked very, very well.
Before you think this is just another radical right-wing hit piece on Democrats, think again. Republicans are just as guilty, if not more, of signaling their virtues by waving the VAWA flag while all along knowing they are taking part in the destruction of the nuclear family. And now you know why President Trump was virtually assassinated by the swamp for attempting to drain it. I'm about to show you what happened to this anti-establishment reporter after I exposed the criminal activities of a corrupt sheriff, state representative, judges, county clerk, and several other elected officials.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ashley Weeder, and I know I only have 3 minutes to explain a very serious problem with what many believe is a wonderful organization in our community, and I'm talking about the Dawn Center. And the women would meet over by the gate, and they would trade like drugs back and forth and money and whatnot. And
you can be stumbling around here drinking and falling off the edge of the table, chair, and you can stay. Just put them to bed.
Apparently they use the filter to soak up liquid on a spoon, and that's what they use to inject into the needle.
I've seen abuse. I've seen neglect, both verbal and physical abuse.
We have women bringing even the guys that they are in here running from to the gate.
it's like you think that they would be there to protect the women, but they honestly are probably just there for a paycheck.
Kicking her 3-year-old son, and she kept kicking him. Are you good yet? Are you good yet?
I was taking girls in the morning to get Suboxone treatment.
You know what I mean? You're a hazard to kids that's walking around here. You're a hazard to staff. You're a hazard to yourself.
I am guilty of answering that hotline and selling a program that didn't exist.
It seems to me that the politicians are just using the facility to help launch their careers and are hiding the criminal activity that goes on inside.
Ashley Weeder was one of the first former Dawn Center clients to speak publicly about the overt criminal activity taking place inside Dawn Center, and did she pay a heavy price?
I went up before the Board of County Commissioners. Once I got home, I guess the people that I named really weren't too happy that I named them, like the sheriff and John Alaka. I guess they weren't really happy, so they ended up sending Detective Galarza to my house. They ended up getting my number somehow, like, we just want to come ask you some questions. Is it okay if we come over? And then I'm like, okay. And I'm like, do you need the address? They're like, no, we know where you live.
Before I leave here today, I want to be sure that you understand what I'm saying. I want to make sure that nobody has asked you to bring this up. That's Mr. Lemons, that's Steve Champion, the chairman. We talked about Commissioner Alaka's wife being on the board.
Yeah.
The sheriff, who is the ultimate authority
Okay.
in the county, would not jeopardize his career and align himself with a facility that's doing something illegal.
Yeah,
Nor would the state representative or any of these persons here. You know, because of Tom Lemons as well. Tom Lemons, about 3 years ago, when you were talking about that time frame, he posted that video. Did anybody by the name of Tom Lemons tell you to call the sheriff's office? I find that any of this is fabricated or somebody put you up to it, you're going to have a separate issue here, because I don't want to go back and start filing a report that's going to go to the state, and then I find out later Ashley lied, and then I got to take Ashley to jail for lying.
Dawn Center was supposed to be a refuge from abuse, but the trauma of living in the facility and the subsequent mafia-style threats to shut her up proved too much for Ashley to handle. Immediately after the unsolicited interrogation by Detective Galarza, Ashley attempted suicide and temporarily lost her children.
Like after he left, I was just so shooken up, and then I ended up becoming suicidal, and I ended up trying to overdose. I got put in the hospital for about 2 weeks, and then after that, I ended up actually losing custody of my children because of my breakdown.
The one victim named Ashley confided in me that she was harassed so bad by law enforcement for saying negative things about the sheriff that she tried to commit suicide and ended up fleeing this county. I was working at the hospital at the time, the night that she came in after trying to commit suicide. There were several deputies standing guard at her door so no one could talk to her. Never had that been done before, unless they were under arrest.
Former Don Center clients, employees, and neighboring residents claim drug and alcohol abuse, child abuse, and even prostitution are commonplace in and around the compound, and that administrators knowingly allow criminals and parental kidnappers to hide inside the facility.
We are not a drug facility. We are a domestic violence facility. Another thing we were told about the alcohol abuse was, nobody can tell you not to come home drunk, can they, Sandra? This is their home. If they want to come home drunk, we can't tell them they can't, or we're no better than the abuser.
I caught several women doing drugs and or drinking, and was told as long as they're not disturbing others to leave them alone. That they were probably drinking or doing drugs because they were a victim of domestic violence. I called in an abuse report on a woman for abusing her children and was informed that we do not do that. We do not get other people involved. That she is probably angry because she is a victim of domestic violence.
Out and out kicking and beating a child? Well, we can't get involved with that. Okay, so you're promoting domestic violence on a lower level, and nobody's intervening. I went to staff. They have the right to discipline their child any way they want. Can't remember this woman's name. She was actually going to the methadone clinic and would sleep in her car in the parking lot, or pass out in her car in her parking lot. It's like one great big party house. After dinner, they all would get drunk or high on whatever.
I called 911 on a woman that was strung out on meth and was reprimanded because we don't interfere and we don't get other parties involved. Women left their young children alone in their room and left the property to go to the bar and go drink. We were to ignore that. Women would share bottles of melatonin and put it in their children's bottles so they would sleep more, especially if they were going out. We were told to not say anything.
She claimed to be homeless and lived behind Walmart. She brought this guy in, claiming that he was an abuse victim, when it turned out that they were caught having sex in one of the other rooms. A lot of the drug and alcohol use is being ignored, brushed under the carpet. Like I said, they're really not helping people. The only people they're helping are themselves by putting, what money that could be used to actually help people, to get them out of a situation, or help them learn the skills to get on with their lives. They're not doing. I don't even know where they're putting it, other than they're all driving new cars.
What we're concerned about is the safety for the kids and what these individuals are leaving behind. We don't need to find torches and needles and spoons and knives for the little ones to play with,
The drugs, the whatever else is going on, the prostitution. Do you want me to do anything
Something for $5,
you?
yeah.
Went up and asked him, what can I do? Can I give you some oral sex? We witnessed somebody giving somebody a blowjob, sorry to be so frank, and we yelled and they just kept doing it. And this happens too right here. Cars just stop and park, and they'll park down here, they park around the areas, they park everywhere.
What do you think they're doing? Are
They're
they
picking
picking people up?
Yep.
Okay.
This may surprise you, but according to numerous witnesses, Dawn Center administrators prefer homeless, drug-addicted prostitutes over actual domestic violence victims. Why? Because they aren't going to complain about the deplorable conditions, federal fraud, or other criminal activities. Rachel Stafford is one of many women who did complain and was immediately removed from the facility after she threatened to talk to this reporter.
We pack 3 kids and all of our stuff, and I have no ride or no help or anything, and I have to leave. Like, you gave me 23 hours to do an impossible task. Yesterday afternoon, I was told that I had to exit today by 3 o'clock. I have 3 kids, no transportation, no help, family support, no car, no means of way of doing anything. At the time, I had $2 in my bank account, and I had to find a ride somewhere to go with my stuff, pack it, get my kids together, and move everything by myself outside here. People come here thinking they're going to help, or this and the third, and they don't.
Well, there are women that would go there. It seemed like they really weren't there to actually get away from a domestic violence situation, just somewhere to be.
If you pick out 100 women that have stayed in the Dawn Center, maybe 10 of them were true victims of domestic violence or sexual assault. The rest were homeless, junkies, prostitutes, you name it.
Yeah, I would say, Tom, out of 40, I may have had 5 legitimate families that needed that service.
Employees say Dawn Center is part of an elaborate human trafficking operation that allows administrators to move families from shelter to shelter around the country in order to meet federal funding guidelines.
Word got around that you could stay at the shelter for 4 months if you're homeless by lying. We were taught how to get them to lie without them knowing that they were lying. And we were told to show them how to say it. Like, if you were a victim of domestic violence within the last 2 years, if you tell me that, then you can stay here 4 months. Word also got around that if DCF came knocking on your door, you could flee and stay at the shelter, and not even a judge could do anything about it. A woman could kidnap her children and go underground from shelter to shelter all over the United States. So say you're a husband and you get an argument with your wife, or you decide to get a divorce, and she kidnaps your children. She can go to the Dawn Center and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing law enforcement can do about it. There's nothing your attorney can do about it. And when she's done her 4 months at the Dawn Center, we can transfer her to another shelter anywhere in the United States, and we will pay her bus fare.
Please explain to me how the sheriff can sit on that board, Mr. Nienhaus, where he was taking girls from our facility, and while they were in jail, he was trying to help rehabilitate them. When they got out, guess where they got to go? Back to the Dawn Center. Guess who brought them? A sheriff's member.
Commercial airline pilot Aaron Puyana contacted RNRF in 2017 after his ex-wife kidnapped their 9-year-old daughter. The mother, Kristen Hooper, is a Canadian citizen and knew she could hide out at Dawn Center while making arrangements to flee the country. Dawn Center and local officials refused to assist the father in recovering his daughter, forcing Pasco County detectives and federal agents to intervene.
Police and CPIs were knocking at the gate, and we were told to warn the women and to not confirm or deny that they were there.
What is the biggest motivator of any criminal enterprise? Money. And why do you think most organizations like Dawn Center are nonprofits? To stave off pesky reporters who try to make public records requests. Combine that with confidentiality laws matched only by those of the intelligence community, and you have an untouchable criminal enterprise that operates under total immunity. There are 42 domestic violence shelters in Florida, and each one receives millions in federal and state funding each year. Dawn Center receives an average of $1.1 million in state and federal funding, not including private donations, goods, and in-kind services. So would it surprise you that over 75% of funding goes directly to employee salaries and benefit packages? Witnesses say there is a stockpile of food, clothing, and toiletries at the facility, but that women and children rarely receive what they need and often go without. In addition, employees force women to sign for goods and services they never receive, so that requirements are met for federal grant applications. And that is called fraud.
We give them money, which is a problem for me, so we need to, I didn't agree to that to begin with, but we should probably look into this and make sure that our tax dollars that go into this, are, there's no, truth to any of this stuff. I don't know. I mean, somebody needs to look at it. First off, tax dollars shouldn't go to it, but I was outvoted 4-1, so it's all good.
They told me that in order to stay there, that I had to sign for feminine products that I wasn't going to use. They said because I fall in the age range, but I had a medical procedure done in November of 2014 that made it to where I don't get a cycle every month, and there was no reason for me to sign for it because I don't use them. And I told them that, and they're like, well, if you want to stay here, you're going to sign this. There were people from the Catholic Charities who said that they had donated gas cards, and at the time I had a car, and I would ask the staff, I'm like, I heard you guys have gas cards, can I get one because I need to go to work? And they were like, well, we can maybe help you with the bus pass, but we don't have any gas cards. And it's like the donations that women get, the staff go through it first to see what they want, and then the women get whatever the slim pickings is at the end.
Donations of clothes were never distributed to women and their children, regardless of the need. All clothes were sorted by either staff or volunteers and sold to a company that pays per pound and shreds them. We were allowed to purchase an item of clothing, $1 per item. Where that money went, I have no idea. Donations of hygiene products were kept in the garage under lock and key. A victim would have to ask at least twice to show that they really needed it. There were boxes and boxes of those mini bottles, and regular size, but they were not given to the victims. Food donations were locked up and only given out to certain women with their children. Boxes and boxes of gifts were never given to victims, but instead used by staff, for Bath and Body Works would donate gift sets, hundreds of them. None of the victims ever got those. Victims requesting shelter that were hearing impaired or couldn't speak English were told, we are always full.
For Boca, put down that you had a session. So they come down to my desk and just talk to me is a session. You know what I mean? I offered this and I offered that. And I'm like, well, I didn't really offer that. You know what I mean? But if you offered this, that comes with it. You know what I mean? So put that on here. Do I think that there is some illegal things that could be necessarily going on that need to be investigated? I think all monies that are federally funded, donated or anything otherwise, should be. One of the moms had to pick up a kid from school. She got a call from the school and the child was misbehaving. We have 2 vans out there and she has 6 kids. She had to take like 4 of them with her to go get the 5th kid. And I'm like, we have a van here, why not just starting to rain? Like, why, you know what I mean? Why put her on a bus and not even give her a bus pass on top of that? Don't even let them know we have bus passes. You know what I mean? Don't volunteer bus passes. We couldn't even give women a toothbrush without them coming to ask. I used to stack, we had these pillowcases that were prepped for the parents, you know, the women rather, you know, that would come in, and I knew they, you know, maybe they had children with them or, you know, whatnot, whatever, if I knew whatever their situation would be. I might throw a couple of diapers in there, a couple of feminine napkins in there, a toothbrush, a washcloth. You know, your bare essentials, you're running from something, is mine, so to speak. You're not going to think to grab all these things. You know you're going to need them. I got in trouble. Who told you to do this? Like, went to my thought, like, who? We got a whole garage full of this stuff. It's just sitting there collecting dust for the most part. You know what I mean? We're just stacking more on it. I mean, we have trash cans full like this, and it is nothing we can do. And I gotta sit here go against my own integrity, my own morals, my own ethics, and watch this poor young girl sit on this camera for over 6 hours with no gas. And can't help her. It's not your problem. It's not our problem. And her buzzed down there and asked for assistance. And to say and nothing I can do, when I know, like, I don't have much. I don't. But I know I had enough to help that young lady to get away from that gate.